Our next speaker is Pamela Loffredo. She is a former York County, Maine MUFON State Section Director and Field Investigator. She is also a contactee experiencer since the age of 4 and is currently employed as a professional psychic, channel, medical intuitive, and healer. She works here in Portland at a local holistic center, and it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Pamela Loffredo. Come on up.
Just want to make sure everybody can hear me. I've been involved in the field of ufology for a very, very long time. Not by choice. You just kind of get led there by being an experiencer. In the beginning, in the early years, you really don't know how to make much sense out of your experiences, and there often isn't anybody to talk to about this. They will tell you it's your imagination and you're talking to whatever, and it's not real, and they'll dissuade you from continuing to believe in such things. Well, it's really hard to not believe when half of your life is, well, I'm 50. In May, I turned 50. And this has been happening since I was 4. So that's about 46 years of my life. And in those that span of time, the contact scenario has changed in many ways over time for absolute reasons. In the beginning, it's often very, very traumatizing, very frightening, very hard to make sense of. There's almost no day that goes by that you don't wonder if you're losing it. There's not a day that goes by that you don't think of this, because it's just there all the time. It affects every day of your life, every part of your life, and it can be very crippling if you don't seek help and get to the other side of the trauma. So a large part of what I've evolved into through all of this is really reaching out and helping others change the contact scenario, is what I call it. From something that is negative and fearful to co-creating with the ETs and participating with them in something that I absolutely know is bigger than we can imagine when we're just looking at the abduction scenario. I don't believe myself to be an abductee, even though I have been taken in the physical form, but mostly a lot of my experiences take place out of body. And yet there's the astral projection type of out of body, and then there's where the aliens can take you right out, take your energy, body, and remove it from your physical shell. That's not an astral projection. That's a little bit different. They literally take the template, the matrix, and they take it right out and can do all sorts of things that way on an energy level. So the other thing is involved in what I'm doing with my life now over the time that I've been doing all this is energy work. Not just in the healing aspect, but understanding that everything is energy, and once energy is created, it cannot be destroyed, which has proven to me scientifically that we don't really die. We change form and can change into many forms. I really believe, through studying and researching this field heavily forever, that we are multi-dimensional beings, and some of us are able to kind of slip in and out of dimensions without trying. We're kind of born with it. We just do it. I think everybody's capable of that, but I do believe it is conditioning and belief, the way you were raised, what goes on in your house, and not always so. I wasn't exactly born in the most religious upbringing, but my father was very, very devoted in his own way and had a whole set of his own beliefs, and did go to Catholic church growing up, and would sit there literally in the church while the priest was talking and the things he was saying. And as a child, inside I knew that the truth wasn't being spoken. And I've always just had a sense of what's true and what isn't. And so I jokingly say over the years, I've developed some amazing bullshit filters. As a psychic, you need to have that. You need to be able to pierce what's there in the physical and go beyond that veil. And so a large part of my life has been studying this. Anybody that's been in this long enough knows that there's periods of time in your life where you push it off, sometimes for years, and then it just always creeps back in somehow. Years and years ago, I was lecturing at Light of the Moon, which no longer exists. It used to be in the old port. I've been lecturing on this topic and teaching other people how to empower themselves and get to the other side of the trauma and fear. I'm pretty fearless at this point. The only thing that I fear is this face. To me, it's a giant bug. And I've always had a fear of bugs since I was little, mostly spiders, but bugs in general. And I feel like that's connected to this because I don't really have that many fears. This is my fear. I am no longer dealing with this energy, which I lovingly call Woony. That's W-O-O-N-I-E. My little boy at 2 years old, this image was drawn from Whitley Strieber's book Communion from my ex-husband. And I framed it and had it on the wall next to my desk. And every time my son would try to go to his bedroom and pass that desk, he would look at this picture and run past it. Literally look at it and run. And I used to just crack up. So I used to say, because he was only 2.5, I'd say, "What's the matter?" And he'd point and go, "Woony." Come to find out many years later, he showed up in one of my contact scenarios. So my children are involved to a point. Because they have my DNA, I really believe that both of them are telepathic, psychic. I see that. My little one, when he was a baby, I'd be thinking something and he would speak it out loud. He would say what I was thinking. Too often to blow off that he wasn't literally tuning in and reading me telepathically. So that is another one of my greatest gifts, is telepathy. I'm able to read, not your every thought. That's intruding to like read the details of your thoughts. But I can read an overall energy that's coming from a person and just kind of feel where they're coming from. The ETs, that's a different story. They literally speak to me in my mind senses, and I don't usually miss too much when they're coming through. They will tone me in my ear, and that is when they're sometimes downloading information that we don't hear audibly, but the frequency is stored somewhere in the computer database of the brain, and they always say, in the right time, that information will be downloaded to you, and you will know what this is about. So I feel like I have a lot of information in me that I'm aware of, because it's all research, but then there's also a lot of stored information in me that at the right time will be activated and downloaded. And I have to say, just Friday night after we had the dinner here, I went home and I'm laying in bed, and again, the more you talk about this stuff, it tends to bring up your past experiences a little bit. So I'm laying in bed just kind of feeling a little bit paranoid, and all of a sudden my right ear started to tone, and it was toning in a way that it never has. It kept going on and on and on. So I'm wondering, this is interesting. It hasn't toned in a little while, but for it to go on for that length of time was very surprising to me. So very curious to see what that download might be about from Friday night. Also, I got a phone call when I got home Friday evening from a very dear friend of mine that said she was traveling out of Portland into the area where we live in like Waterboro, Hollis, driving right through Portland around 5:30 p.m. Friday night, and she swears she saw a UFO right here in Portland. So I kind of laughed because I'm thinking, well, we're all converged here, all this, all this alien energy here in Portland. So you never know what might be coming by to see. But this picture is, that image is very similar to this one, a little bit different. If you look at the shape of the head, they look like similar in race. I have dealt with these guys. They used to be the ones that scared me. These are the ones that gave me the recurring nightmares. These were the ones that kept showing up, intruding, invasive, scaring me, traumatizing. These are the ones, from my recollection. Years later, after doing a lot of personal empowerment work with mentors, these blues, I call them, started to show up. This was drawn, again, by a friend. I'm no artist, so the best I can do is kind of draw and describe. He drew this one as a female. I don't know if anybody can really see it. It'll be at my table if anybody wants to view it. Because of the story that I told him about the blues, many years later after I got over the trauma, because you can do that, you really can, and I'll maybe talk in a few minutes about how I did that. But once I got to the other side, I really changed the contact scenario by saying, if this is going to happen to me anyway, and there's no way I can stop it, I'm going to take control of it. I'm going to be more in charge of it. I don't like that they have all the control. That really bothered me. It used to get me very angry. So, after all the reading and reading, I came upon Lisa Royal, who is now Lisa Royal Holt. And her take on a lot of different things really opened my eyes to the whole consciousness, spirituality connection to this, when for many, many years I had really studied all the nuts and bolts science, the propulsion systems, what the government knew, all about Roswell, all that stuff for early on, and came across the Betty Barney Hill story. The interesting thing is all of this happened to me where I was born and raised in the state of New York, right in Westchester County. Now, born and raised there, born in New Rochelle, raised in Eastchester, and then moved back to New Rochelle with my dad when I was a teenager. My dad worked nights. He worked third shift. He'd leave the house at 9:30 at night and not get home till 6 in the morning, which meant that during this huge UFO flap wave that went on in the Hudson Valley region of New York in the early 80s, I was left alone every night. And I was probably between the ages of 18 and 23, during that time frame. And I can go back because I graduated in 1981 and I had experiences through school and high school and things like that. But the really big stuff really started to happen from probably the ages of 18 to 24. That range of time, I had so many contact experiences, and they really, a lot of them started to really pick up. Now that I wasn't in the home at night with my mother and my sisters and everybody in the home, I was all with my dad alone, and he was not even there every night. I was always afraid of the dark, but when you have these experiences, you go to bed every night kind of afraid. You wonder if you ever really sleep deeply. It's like you got one eye open all the time, because you just never know what's going to be standing there. So, in New York, a lot of things went on through childhood. I used to walk through the high school field every night after working out. I was a gymnast for many years, and we used to go up to the high school and work out. I would run home across that dark field so fast, it was quite the expanse of a field. And I don't even know how I could run so fast, I'll tell you, but I was constant, my heart was pounding. I really believe that at some point growing up, I had more than one contact experience in that field. I just know that I did because I was like paranoid at night, not during the day, it was always at night. To go into that field, to walk across that field, it was always like a very frightening thing for me. Growing up, I was always sad. I always felt like they dropped me off on the wrong planet. I would look up and spend my life looking up. I think I have neck problems from doing that all my life, just looking up. Feeling homesick, feeling like I don't belong here, feeling different. I've always been different, and that's okay, I suppose, but when you don't fit in with the rest of the sheep, when you really can't fit in, you do the best you can to fit in, and you lead a somewhat normal life, but there's always this double life that goes on over here that you don't dare talk about. So it's a very lonely place when you're young growing up, and there's a lot of confusion and disinformation out there. Steve and Travis were talking about Philip Glass last night. I almost had an uproar in the back over there, over that one. There's a lot of disinformation agents out there that would debunk a lot of the stuff that goes on when they themselves have never even so much as had a sighting. I really believe that this is like a direct experience thing, and unless you have it, then there's no way to wrap around it really unless you are having your own direct experience with such things. You can only wonder, according to the information. To actually live through it repeatedly throughout life, we got enough problems living on planet Earth. To add something like this to your life is crazy. It makes life a little crazy, to say the least. So I just couldn't get over when I finally moved in with my father at 16 years old, and he was going out every night, going to work, and here I am alone. At first, I was nervous. When I first moved in, I was very nervous, and it was hard to sleep. And I didn't even have my own bedroom. At first, I was sleeping on the couch. So I was going to sleep at night by myself, and different things started to occur. I had a levitation experience that really scared me, because I had nothing to do with that. I am laying on this couch, and my whole body just kind of rose off the couch about this much, and I was just kind of floating there, and I didn't move a muscle. There's no way that you can get up that way without moving a muscle, and I didn't do a thing. I felt like something took over me and lifted me off this couch and then let me go, and I did kind of hit, and I was awake and aware of this. That really scared me. I felt like some demon or something was trying to get me or do something to me. All of the paranormal experiences that come along with this as well, you know, I ended up getting involved in so many different aspects of the unseen world, the unknown, the things that we can't touch, that we know are there, you know, and the one thing about ET is they never let you bring home any physical evidence. So that's always been a tough one to kind of prove, that they just won't give you anything to show. I think there was, through the research I've done, a couple of people that claim they've been given some things, and I don't know whether that turned out to be anything valid or not, but so I'm going to get into more now, like the regular crazy experiences I had in New Rochelle when I moved in with my father, and that was definitely during the Hudson Valley UFO sightings. There was all kinds of reports in the early 80s. They call it a UFO flap or a wave, where for whatever reason they're interested in a certain area, there's a time period that they're in there, whatever it is they're doing. They were literally spotted floating over water and like bringing things up out of the water through a beam. You know, I wonder about like the whole Noah's Ark thing. I wonder if they're absolutely taking species specimens from everywhere on this planet and preserving it in order to reseed in case we mess up the place, you know. So there's definitely, if you think life on Earth will ever really end, I don't believe so. I believe even if we end, I believe there's DNA out there that exists for everything that's alive and has been since they seeded it the first time. That is my belief. I believe in God, but I believe that God created everything and then we took over from there and decided what to do with all these things. And I really believe they found a planet that was inhabitable over time. Everything changed. They could have, you know, to some degree enhanced the ability to create life on a planet, the atmospheric conditions necessary for such a thing, whatever. I think they can try to affect such a thing. And I believe this planet was seeded from many places. I think that's why we have so much diversity here, despite our own, you know, tampering and mutating of plants and things like that on our own. Or whatever was like originally here that has evolved and changed on its own over time. I think that was the original experiment to begin with. What will evolve and change over time? I believe that in a way, they're trying to create a superhuman race, or at least a more evolved race of beings in physicality in this reality. And so some people are being abducted and they're having genetic things taken from them, especially eggs and sperm, and hybrids are involved in this. I've seen such things. I am not participating in that way. I'm a psychic, medium, medical intuitive, healer, shaman. It just all comes natural to me. I was born with these abilities. I've learned to work with them, develop them, because they're not well developed. And if nobody tells you anything about it, you spend your life where this kind of does you, you're not really doing it, it's doing you. So add all that on, and you know, you can really have a rough time as a young person with this much ability and no understanding of it, where to go with it, who to talk to. It wasn't until I got out of New York and really moved to Maine in 1992. In September of 92, I moved to Maine. So I've been here now 20 years. Last year was my 20th year. The experiences that have happened here, even though I had so many in the New Rochelle area, they follow you. They follow you. They followed me up to Maine when I moved here, and they've been here since with me. I don't have the same experiences contact-wise that I used to. That absolutely changed after I moved to Maine. That did not take place in New York. I moved up here with total fear and trauma still about this whole thing. When I moved, this is amazing too, and I'll jump back to New Rochelle, but I find out that the amazing thing about it is I wasn't living here 2 weeks. Not even 2 weeks. It was like 10 days even. When my, at the time, husband went over to the grocery store and came back with some things, and he came back with a newspaper, and it was a free little newspaper you pick up at the grocery store, and it was called Odyssey. And it had to do with holistic and metaphysical things, whatever. He knew I was into that stuff, so he picked me up one. Well, I'm looking in the back in the calendar, and I see that right in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, in like a week or something, is the New Hampshire MUFON conference. Now, I hadn't been involved in MUFON at all to that point, knew of it, definitely. Hadn't like been living here long enough to look into what was going on here yet, so there it was, right in my face. So I'm thinking, okay, I don't know what's going on in Maine, but this is not far, so I'm gonna go down. My husband was nice enough to watch the baby at the time, Christian was only 2, and let me spend the entire weekend down at that hotel. That's where I met Stanton Friedman for the first time, Stephen Greer, and some really amazing speakers. Raymond Fowler was there. I really got to talk to a lot of amazing people, and since I spent the whole weekend, I got to have dinner with them on Friday night, and that's when I met Leland Bud Bechtel, who used to be the Maine MUFON director, Maine State MUFON director. After sitting with Bud and talking with him for a really long time, he suggested that I contact him after I get home, after the conference, and hook up with MUFON and start doing some work with them. And I told him I would really like to investigate the sightings and the abductions. That's what I would really like to do, is do the research part of it all. And he said, well, you need certain degrees for all of that, but an investigator, you know, we can do that. You got to take a test and all this. So he said, I would like to appoint you to Maine York County State Section Director. I said, what's involved in that? And he told me, and I'm like, okay, I think I could do that. And again, my husband was very supportive, even though he didn't know what to think of half of all this. He believed in it enough because he supported whatever I was doing. So that just took on a life of its own. At that MUFON conference when I met Bud, that was the beginning of my MUFON career. I started right in as soon as I got home, didn't waste any time. And not very long after that, I think it was in November, there was a major abduction sighting in Sebago Lake area. There was a young girl with her brother in the car. She was driving and her brother was in there with her. They were both teenagers. They both saw the same thing. I have images of what they drew, because this, I actually have their reporting information through MUFON here. And absolutely reported the same thing with Pete Davenport. Pretty much all of the things that I reported through MUFON, I also reported with Pete Davenport out in Seattle. That's New Fork, the National UFO Reporting Center. Pete's a good friend of mine. I've been meeting up with him on and off over the years. It's been a while. It's been quite a while now, but when I was very much into MUFON in the 90s, I collaborated with Pete quite a bit. He really liked my UFO reports, the way that I would write them up. He said he's really enjoyed the way that I did my reports, as opposed to a lot of the other MUFON stuff he would read. So I really have some interesting information written and stuff about these experiences, and I don't want to get into them and take up all that time, but it will be over at my table if anybody wants to come and peruse it. There was another sighting not long after that between a man, Emmanuel Striligus was his name, and there was another woman, and I don't want to, she never wanted her name mentioned. He used to be a former Navy person. I can't, this is back like in the early 90s. I can't remember what, I don't know if he was Spanish or Greek. I think he was Greek. And he was in the Greek Navy. In other countries, they make you serve time. They force you. So at that time frame, he had to do like 2 years. He was very familiar with all kinds of aerial phenomenon, all kinds of aerial spacecraft, whether they were, you know, commercial, private, whatever. You have to learn that stuff when you're an investigator for MUFON. So we talked all about what he saw, and he was really blown away, because he admitted he never believed in such things, just thought it was. And what he saw at close range, he said there's no denying it now. I'm absolutely convinced. I actually have him on tape, audio tape of just describing his whole incident. So the same thing that he saw the same night was reported the same night by a woman not far from where he was. Same exact report came out with the same visual image, same situation. So that was interesting. We had 2 witnesses that night. And that was at a time when people started seeing all up and down the East Coast there happened to be these things, just fireballs, and they were seen from like Maine to Florida, you know, in a time span. They were just all over the East Coast. That was, I think, the time frame that was occurring with the two of them. I got out of MUFON after being involved several years because I had my own personal reasons to believe that we were being infiltrated by Secret Service or people like that. Might be a few of them here, you never know. They're just as curious to see how much we know and where we're at with everything and, you know, what we're telling people and sharing out there. I really can't believe that there's still a UFO cover-up in this country when so many have come out and disclosed. I really believe that that's coming. I feel sooner than later. Although I've been teaching and talking about disclosure projects since Stephen started it way a long time ago, and thought it would happen like a long time ago. I thought it would happen by now, like a long time ago. I'm surprised that we really are still ridiculously almost trying to cover this up, because it's out there. It's all the way out there at this point, and I think they just ought to own up to it. So let's go back to the crazy things that happened in New Rochelle under this book during that UFO wave. And the city of New Rochelle is actually mentioned in this book. Other people had called in sightings. One night, you get this prompt to go to the window and look out. And I've seen some crazy things when I've been prompted to go out and look at the window. Even somebody died. This was somebody on a bicycle that was hit by a car, was told to go to the window, and literally I saw that happen. Don't know why that happens to me, but I am psychic, so I sense to do things, and I just don't question it, I do it. So I was told to go to the window and look, and I did, and right above the building across from me, there was a UFO sitting right up there. And it appeared to be, it was stationary, it appeared to be spinning. But I was sitting wondering, is it spinning? Or is it the lights around it that are blinking? It looked like the lights were blinking on and off really fast, giving it the effect that it was spinning. So whether it was spinning or not, I don't know, but the lights were certainly showing that it was alive and some kind of movement going on. I was mesmerized at this point. This was a close-up sighting right over the building across from me. I just kind of, I don't know what made me do it, but my grandmother lived in the building to the right over there. It was this big complex. I got on the phone and I called my grandmother. I'm like, Nan, there's a UFO, look out the window. And she did. She couldn't quite see it from her angle. I said, well, I'm going to get a better look. I'm going to go up on the roof and check it out. She just starts yelling at me, going, no, don't do that, they take people. She read that in Star, the Inquirer, she used to read those magazines. I'm like, well, I don't know, Nan, if they take people, but I'm going up there. So I did. I got up to the roof and I watched this thing, and I knew it was no plane, no weather balloon, no blimp, nothing like that. It literally flew and started to move and flew this way. And then it didn't even fly out of sight when I'm thinking, oh, it's going away. I'm just like thinking this to myself, right? Come back, don't go away. Well, it turned and came back. So I'm thinking, did that read my mind? Or like, this is not an airplane. Airplanes don't turn around and come back. This is like that. I'm Italian from New York, so the hands go. That's the way that works. Okay. So, a lot of experiences in New Rochelle. That thing came back and I knew that something was very strange about, things don't do that. Nothing in the sky will go that way and then turn around and come right back. So I was convinced that was an absolute UFO sighting that night. Not long after that incident, I was having all kinds of dreams, recurring nightmares, really frightening, same scenario all the time. Could make no sense out of it. I had never been in a tornado in my life, but they kept giving me tornado dreams, and they were intense tornado dreams. And they would scare me, and I'd wake up going, why am I dreaming about tornadoes? I still don't know why. I still have never seen or been in or witnessed a tornado. I'm hoping never to do so. But I feel like that is something that may occur in the future. All earth change things could occur. I believe a lot of experiencers have been shown earth changes, viewed them on these big screens, that we've been shown things about the future of what could happen if we don't wake up and start changing our ways and start looking at living life on earth in balance. That is all that is needed here. Balance. We have a polarity planet that is very driven to extremism. And we don't know the middle ground in integration and balance, moderation, balance. It's all this too much gimme, greed, and everybody's afraid to do without something. There's all this fear of lack. So that all that gratification, instant gratification that everybody wants, instead of investing into long-term workable solutions. Everybody wants something now. And that's just not the way that we tend to operate here. When things work, it's because it's many minds, many great minds sitting and looking for options, solutions. And to me, the only way we're ever going to fix anything down here is balance. That's the way that it is. We must, everything is acceptable to a point, to a limit, and then we go beyond that limit into imbalance. And again, a lot of my teachings, a lot of the things I talk about are not my opinion. They come from ET. All right, so if I've already done 45 minutes, wow. That's pretty interesting. I feel like I've been up here 10. All right, I've got to cover some things. So quickly, the stuff that happened in New Rochelle. One night I was prompted to go look out the window again, and I looked down, and there's a man in black standing down there looking right up at me into the window. Talk about horrified. Again, I was home alone that night. I just ran away from the window, and all night long I was just kind of freaked out. There's nobody you can call. Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters? Who are you going to call, really? The police? There's a man in black down below. All right, so the recurring dreams, having something stuck into my eye. I believe I have an implant behind my eye. I've never been regressed. I've never had my head x-rayed. I'm not making this stuff up. I have reason to believe this. But if you're an experiencer, contact the abductee, whatever. Sometimes you just would rather leave sleeping dogs lie. I know enough that it's already encroached upon me having a normal life. I'm almost afraid to go too much deeper and know what seems to not disturb me anymore. It's not affecting me at all anymore. And at this point, as curious as I am, I really don't want to upset the apple cart because things are good. I'm very much into Tesla technology, futuristic medicine, diagnostic tools for future medicine, and absolutely free energy. I'm totally into concepts of free energy. I have information about that at my table back there. A friend of mine right here in Maine is selling these wood chip burners that have just been approved finally by the EPA in Maine. So I'm really psyched about that. And there's information about that back there. But I want to talk quickly, because I wish we had more time to talk more about my experiences. If anybody wants to know, they can come back. I really want to talk about what happened to me last year after Experience of Speak One in Gorham, Maine, right around this time last year. 2 weeks after that conference, I went to work like any other day. I work at Leap and Lizards. It's on Forest Avenue here in Portland. I'm a psychic medium and Reiki teacher there, and I've been there 9 years this July. Normal day at work, I'm used to this. I do this all day. It's like an assembly line of channeling and readings all day long. Nothing like any other day. Come home, it was a Sunday, come home, hanging out with my older son. We do that. We sit in his room, we watch movies, and I spend a lot of time with him. When his younger brother is with his dad for the weekend, I spend time with my older son. So I felt a little bit tense up in the shoulder area. I get the tension back there a lot, just holding on to energy in that area. And I had asked him, like I do many times when I feel tension, can you rub my shoulders a little bit? I feel like I took on a lot today. Can you rub me? So he said, yeah, hang on, just let me finish my cigarette. So I said, all right, so he did. And he came over and he started to rub my shoulders. Has done this before, no big deal. This is no big thing. So he's rubbing, and literally in less than a minute, I don't know if Kathy is in here. Kathy Davis. I call her that, it's Debbie. But when she was up here speaking yesterday, I have never heard her speak before. So she said something that I was sitting over there going, she just described exactly what happened to me. He was rubbing me, and all of a sudden, my entire body, and I am not exaggerating, I literally felt like somebody poured gasoline on me and lit me on fire. I felt like I was on fire. And all I could do was leap out of the chair and get away from him. It wasn't that he was causing it, but my instinct was to just get away from whatever was happening. As I got up off the chair and went to turn down this way, I collapsed. I fainted, passed out, and landed on this shoulder. I still have a separated bone right here from it. It's right here, sticking out. I think I dislocated my collarbone in that hit to the floor. Interesting thing was, this was not fainting, this was not passing out. I had a near-death experience, and I know that because I've been in medicine forever. And after 45 seconds of my son slapping me around, trying to get me to come to, and he is thinking I'm dead, literally, I came to. And when he helped me up off the floor, I said to him, what are we doing on the floor? What just happened? And where did I just go? Those are the three things that I said to him. So he said, Ma, just get up and lay on the bed, whatever. Do you need to get you anything? I'm like, no. So we got up off the floor, and when I did that, I felt wet, and the floor was wet. Usually when that happens, you're not here anymore. That's an absolute letting go, and so I believe that they took that energy matrix out and left the shell on the floor, and I wasn't going to come to until they put that back in there, which thankfully they did, or I wouldn't be standing here. But what they told me after, I'll be out of here in 2 seconds. What they told me after, because when I came to and was a little bit more coherent and sitting, I said to my son, I don't know why, but I said, get me an ice bag. I feel like I need ice right here, like right here. I felt so much peace, and all I could describe is right here in my heart energy, it felt huge. I felt like I had this huge, gaping, open energy right here, right in front of me here, like a giant void was open. That's the only way I can describe it. No pain, not an ounce of pain in my body. I felt so wonderful, so peaceful. And all of a sudden, now I'm starting to remember what took place in that flash of 45 seconds. I was on a table, no doubt about it, on my back on a table, looking up at extreme white light. So extreme, it was unbelievable. And I had beings all around me, like in every spot around the table. There were white beings. They were white, all in white, and they had these like pointed type things toward their hat. I couldn't see their heads. They had something on their heads. But their hats came to a slight point, and that I remember visually. So I'm laying there like, what the hell's going on? What are you doing to me? And they said, we are recalibrating you for the new earth. That is what they said to me. And when I came to, my son started asking me questions. Do you remember anything? Whatever. And I said, they told me they are the Lords of Light. The Lords of Light, and they have recalibrated me for the new earth. Guess that's the only way they can do that, is to snatch you out and do something to you and then put you back in. And anybody that wants to see it, it's very interesting. Not long after that incident, I had an aura picture taken, and I've had them throughout my life because I have friends that own a machine. And the colors are pretty similar. They're usually up there in the blues and purples. That's typical of a psychic empath. But whoa, you should see the heart chakra and the third eye chakra. Wow, unbelievable. I've never ever had my aura show up that way. And this is since that experience. So if anybody wants to come and check it out, it's pretty interesting. So if anybody wants to read about the UFOs in the Hudson Valley, that will talk all about what I was experiencing back in the 80s. I don't believe this book's for sale here, but anybody can get the name and the author. Thank you.